So many questions and so few answers. Welcome to Perspective Thinking.
Next tonight to the battle between Apple and the FBI
involving NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, now officially charged with espionage this morning.
Ready to mark the first anniversary of his papacy. This week, he's been called a Catholic rock star, pumping new life into the church right when it seemed to need it most. So.
Hi, welcome to Perspective Thinking, and I'm your host, Stephen Leslie. And hot in the news now is a case with Apple CEO Tim Cook and the fact that FBI has been pressuring him to build a backdoor to get access to one of the shooters in the San Bernardino's case, that get access to his phone. And obviously the issue is that when you build a backdoor to one phone, you build that type of system, the kind of code that would have to be written for that would definitely manipulate or greatly weaken the security structure that Apple has placed on all their phones. And so Apple is looking into the future and realizing that this is not going to be good for its customers, and the encryption that they have promised to their customers to make sure that everything is safe, right? So we want to look at the issue again. This is perspective thinking, and obviously we want to look at the news, the way that's being presented, and look at the matters for what they really are. And as much as, again, using this term sensationalist, as sensationalist as other media outlets are, New York Times has the ability to sometimes look at things somewhat objectively, which is something that you can still appreciate about them, but obviously not in every respect. So I just want to look at what New York Times is saying, and they're pretty much explaining Apple's fight with the FBI, right? Now it says that Tuesday evening, a federal court ordered Apple to help the FBI unlock an iPhone used by one of the attackers who killed 14 people in San Bernardino, right, in California in December. It says Wednesday morning, Apple said in a strongly worded letter that it would challenge the court's request, and that letter we will take a look at that just shortly. While technology companies recently have resisted government demands, Apple's letter is one of the industry's most forceful pushbacks against a court ruling. In the hours after Apple's letter was published, technologists and legal experts have been dissecting what exactly the Cupertino, California company can or won't do to help the government. Now, they say, what is the government asking for? The Federal Bureau of Investigation wants to examine the iPhone used by Saeed Farouk to determine whether he and his wife Tashreen Malik had planned the shooting directly with the Islamic State. The iPhone, a 5C version of the smartphone that was released in 2013, is locked by a passcode which the FBI wants Apple to circumvent. Apple would have to build a new version of its iOS smartphone software that allows the FBI to bypass certain restrictions. Apple claims this software can give someone the potential to unlock any iPhone in someone's physical possession. So what does the court order require Apple to do? The court is ordering the company to bypass or disable a feature that automatically wipes an iPhone clean of all of its data after 10 incorrect password attempts have been entered. This is a standard feature on iPhones. Technically, that would not require Apple to decrypt the passcode that blocks access by outsiders to the iPhone. It would allow the government to try an unlimited number of passwords without fear of the phone erasing all of its stored information. In electronic security parlance, that is what is called a brute force attack, and it all takes its time and patience to submit a large number of passcodes. Brute force attacks are usually carried out with the assistance of a powerful computer, which can automatically input millions of different password combinations until it guesses the correct one. Now, the question is, and this is one of the big questions, is can Apple comply with the order if it wants to? Apple's opposition is mostly ideological. And yeah, I mean, it's mostly ideological, but it's something that should obviously be allowed to be implemented by any American citizen, any American company, right? I mean, that's the premise of that, of freedom. And so the fact that the FBI has to put this much pressure, and not just the FBI, but as we'll see, the media puts that particular pressure on Apple as well. You even heard Donald Trump recently telling people to boycott Apple and their products. This is a pressure that they're putting on them, and so you tell people that they're free, but then you still heavily criticize them and pressure them to make a different decision. And I think this country more than any other understands the strength of social pressure, and it's interesting to see that Tim Cook still holds up strongly against a lot of the opposition that's come. So as New York Times is saying, Apple's opposition is mostly ideological. The same engineers who built strong encryption into the iPhone to protect our users would ironically be ordered to weaken those protections and make our users less safe. Tim Cook, Apple chief executive, wrote in the letter, Apple argues that the software the FBI wants it to create does not exist, but technologists say that the company can do it. Why can't the FBI build this software? The iPhone is designed to run only iOS software created by Apple. For the phone to recognize that the software was made by Apple, the company must sign each piece with an encrypted key to verify it. Even if the FBI tried to build a new version of iOS, it would not have Apple's crucial signature. The agency argues that this is a one-time request and wants Apple to create software only to get into Mr. Farouk's phone, not unlimited access to iPhones everywhere. Are there other ways for Apple FBI to get this information? There's a lot of data available that does not require Apple's assistance in unlocking the phone. The FBI could ask Verizon, the cellular carrier by which Mr. Farouk's phone was serviced, to give the agency more information on the phone. The government could also request information from the application developers who created the apps for Mr. Farouk's iPhone. But those are avenues the FBI has probably already pursued, explaining why it wants Apple to unlock the device. Some data is not accessible without Apple's intervention. Okay, now with all things considered, I think one of the reasons, and I don't know if the FBI has explored the Verizon possibilities, but do remember about 2 to 3 years ago when the NSA contractor Edward Snowden was able to reveal that the American government was spying on all of our phone calls, our emails, and everything else. Verizon was one of the unfortunate parties that was revealed to have had their stuff hacked as well and read into. And so with the standard issue to having a phone that was registered to Verizon as its carrier, it may not be an avenue that the FBI will want to go through, and so it would look like, again, an intrusion on in privacy and stuff like that for most people. But again, they're trying to get into his phone, so I don't think that's the issue. So maybe it is the case that that they believe they need Apple, and as you will see in Tim Cook's interview with David Muir, he did let him know that they could early on have had a different way of dealing with it, where he could have accessed it from the cloud, but FBI did not come to Tim Cook early enough, or Apple early enough. And it makes me wonder, an organization like the FBI that is a government agency, it makes me wonder, I mean, I know they have a certain amount of technology, if the people that they're working with hasn't made it clear to them that this was an option, right? And instead of allowing that option to slide on by, you simply bring it to become this big issue and take it to the public, where you need to pressure Apple's CEO, right? So that's what we look at in terms of the New York Times coverage of it, let's just look quickly at the Apple's personal letter to their customers. Now, this was published on February 16th, 2016, and this is what Apple's message is to their customers. They said the United States government has demanded that Apple take an unprecedented step which threatens the security of our customers. We oppose this order, which has implications far beyond the legal case at hand. And I'm pretty sure a guy as intelligent as Tim Cook knows the implications, way beyond. So I don't think the FBI's downplaying of it just being one phone, is obviously not just the issue. This moment calls for public discussion, and we want our customers and people around the country to understand what is at stake. The need for encryption. Smartphones led by iPhone have become an essential part of our lives. People use them to store an incredible amount of personal information, from our private conversations to our photos, our music, our notes, our calendars and contacts, our financial information and health data, even where we have been and where we are going. All that information needs to be protected from hackers and criminals who want to access it, steal it, and use it without our knowledge or permission. Customers expect Apple and other technology companies to do everything in our power to protect their personal information, and at Apple we are deeply committed to safeguarding their data. Compromising the security of our personal information can ultimately put our personal safety at risk. That is why encryption has become so important to all of us. For many years, we have used encryption to protect our customers' personal data because we believe it's the only way to keep their information safe. We have even put that data out of our own reach because we believe the contents of your iPhone are none of our business. The San Bernardino case. We were shocked and outraged by the deadly act of terrorism in San Bernardino last December. We mourn the loss of life and want justice for all those whose lives were affected. The FBI asks for help in the days following the attack, and we have worked hard to support the government's efforts to solve this horrible crime. We have no sympathy for terrorists. When the FBI has requested data that's in our possession, we have provided it. Apple complies with valid subpoenas and search warrants. As we have in the San Bernardino case, we have also made Apple engineers available to advise the FBI, and we've offered our best ideas on a number of investigative options at their disposal. We have great respect for the professionals at the FBI, and we believe their intentions are good. Up to this point, we have done everything that is both within our power and within the law to help them. But now the U.S. government has asked for something we simply do not have and something we consider too dangerous to create. They have asked us to build a backdoor to the iPhone. Specifically, the FBI wants us to make a new version of the iPhone operating system, circumventing several important security features, and install it on an iPhone recovered during the investigation. In the wrong hands, this software, which does not exist today, would have potential to unlock any iPhone in someone's physical possession. The FBI may use different words to describe this tool, but make no mistake, building a version of iOS that bypasses security in this way would undeniably create a backdoor. And while the government may argue that its use will be limited to this case, there is no way to guarantee such control. And he speaks of the threat to data security. Some would argue that building a backdoor for just one iPhone is a simple, clean-cut solution, but it ignores both the basics of digital security and the significance of what the government is demanding in this case. In today's digital world, the key to an encrypted system is a piece of information that unlocks the data, and it's only as secure as the protections around it. Once the information is known or a way to bypass the code is revealed, the encryption can be defeated by anyone with that knowledge. Now, I'm not going to read all of that, but he does go on to say how this is a dangerous precedent, and he says rather than asking for legislative action through Congress, the FBI is proposing an unprecedented use of the All Writs Act of 1789 to justify an expansion of its authority. Now, this is to be able to do that, and I'm glad that Tim Cook obviously knows this information. With that kind of authoritative tone, it just shows to what we were speaking about in our first episode about speaking like a dragon, right? Where America is now allowing itself to speak like a dragon, right? In very forceful tones. And the interesting thing is that the American people have no problem with it because they have not realized how the voice has changed over the years, right? You know, it's like having a friend, and you know, at first you guys are very amicable, and you realize that over time they start to become very irritable, very edgy, and you know, you start to wonder what happened. The interesting thing about the American people and their government is that the American people have not realized when their government began to speak a bit differently and to seem a bit edgy about stuff. Now, he continues to say that the government would have us remove security features and add new capabilities to the operating system, allowing a passcode to be input electronically. This would make it easier to unlock an iPhone by brute force, trying thousands of millions of combinations with the speed of a modern computer. Right. So this is the issue, and you know, you can always go to the link apple.com/customer-letter to just read what Tim Cook has to say there. It's not a long read. As a matter of fact, you can see that was the last part of that, right? So, you know, we looked at that, and we saw the issue there, and I would like, you know, just let's take a while to look at the interview between David Muir and Tim Cook and what Tim Cook is actually saying.
It's the debate pitting the FBI against one of the world's most valuable companies, Apple. And tonight, in an exclusive interview, Apple CEO Tim Cook on why he is refusing to help the feds break into the phone used by the San Bernardino gunman. World News Tonight anchor David Muir also gets Cook to respond to calls by Donald Trump for an Apple boycott.
As we sit here, you know, some of the families of the victims in San Bernardino have now come out in support of the judge's order that Apple help the FBI unlock that iPhone. One family reportedly saying, "We're angry and confused as to why Apple is refusing to do this." What would you say to those families tonight?
David, they have our deepest sympathy. What they've been through, no one should have to go through. Apple has cooperated with the FBI fully in this case. They came to us and asked us for all the information we had on this phone, and we gave everything that we had. But this case is not about one phone. This case is about the future. What is at stake here is, can the government compel Apple to write software that we believe would make hundreds of millions of customers vulnerable around the world, including the US?
And you'd have to write that system in order to unlock that phone.
Yes. The only way we know would be to write a piece of software that we view as sort of the software equivalent of cancer. We think it's bad news to write. We would never write it. We have never written it. And that is what is at stake here.
The FBI, though, says it believes that Syed Farouk used that phone to communicate with his wife, his accomplice. And I'm curious, do you struggle at all with the possibility that there could be information on that phone that could reveal other plots, other people who were involved in planning the San Bernardino attack?
David, if we knew a way to get the information on the phone that we haven't already given, if we knew a way to do this that would not expose hundreds of millions of other people to issues, we would obviously do it.
I want to get to what the FBI director, James Comey, has said. He said it's not about a slippery slope. It's about, quote, 14 people who were slaughtered and many more had their lives ruined. Maybe the phone holds the clue to finding more terrorists, maybe it doesn't. But we can't look the survivors in the eye and ourselves if we don't follow any possible lead out there. Do you understand where he's coming from?
I do understand where he's coming from, and this is an incredibly complex issue, but it is about the future. Think about this. If a court compels Apple to write this piece of software, to place a backdoor in the iPhone, we believe it does put hundreds of millions of customers at risk.
We asked Tim Cook to explain this new system they would have to create to break into that iPhone.
The passcode on the front, like we all use to get into our iPhones. And after a certain number of tries, it just auto-erases the phone?
What they want is they want us to develop a new operating system that takes out the security precautions, and then they want an ability to go through a number of passwords at the speed of a modern computer.
A computer would do that to figure out the code.
A computer would do that. And so that is what they're asking for. We believe that is a very dangerous operating system.
You hear that from the Republican frontrunner, from Donald Trump.
What I think you ought to do is boycott Apple until such time as they give that security number.
Is that the right route in saying boycott Apple?
The best thing, David, is America is strongest when we all come together.
So is a boycott a way to come together?
You know, I think a democracy is messy sometimes, but this is, I love democracy. That is who we are. I think the best thing to do is to discuss and collaborate and work together on whatever the solution may be.
Let me ask you this. You've invited me to Apple before. The stories are legendary about new products with black drapery over them, the locked doors, the secrecy. And if any American company can keep a secret, it's Apple. To those who might say, why didn't the FBI and Apple team up far earlier in one of those secret labs and get this done, and no one would have ever had to know about it?
I can't talk about the tactics of the FBI. They've chosen what they've done, and they've chosen to do this out in the public for whatever reasons that they have. What we think at this point, given it is out in the public, is that we need to stand tall and stand tall on principle. There's probably more information about you on your phone than there is in your house. Our smartphones are loaded with our intimate conversations, our financial data, our health records. They're also loaded with the location of our kids in many cases. And so it's not just about privacy, but it's also about public safety.
If you didn't think this would set a precedent, if you didn't believe this would be a slippery slope, is this something your engineers could do, and how quickly could they do it?
We've never done it before, so I don't know how long it would take. Would I do it? In a perfect world where none of the implications that I'm talking about exist, yes, we would do it. We would obviously do it. But we don't live in a perfect world.
But in your quiet moments, do you have any concern that you might be able to prevent a terrorist attack by breaking into that phone?
David, some things are hard, and some things are right, and some things are both. This is one of those things.
And in this case, you believe there are some things that just should never be created?
Correct.
Today, Steve Jobs would have turned 61. Cook says not a day goes by that he doesn't think about his iconic predecessor.
Have you thought about what he would have done in this situation?
Steve always did what he thought was right. And it is so clear to me that he loved what America was founded on so much and would do nothing to put all of these customers at risk. He'd be doing the same thing.
Tim Cook tells us they talked to the FBI early on, giving them advice, he says, on other ways to best get information from that iPhone, to plug it in, to back it up to the iCloud.
Did they do that?
Unfortunately, in the early days of the investigation, FBI directed the county to reset the iCloud password. When that is done, the phone will no longer back up to the cloud. And so I wish they would have contacted us earlier so that that would not have been the case.
How crucial was that missed opportunity?
It is very crucial.
The White House said this week that the FBI's request is, quote, limited in scope. Limited in scope. Do you agree with that? And have you talked to the president on this?
I have not talked to the president. I will talk to the president. Do I think it's limited? No.
You have talked to the president before on these issues of privacy and security. Are you disappointed there wasn't more of a dialogue with the administration before this swift action from the Justice Department?
Yes.
You wish there was more done?
Yes. And I think there should have been. This filing, we found out about the filing from the press.
Apple must respond to the court order by Friday.
I'm curious, Tim, did you ever think that you'd find yourself at the center of such a crucial national debate?
No. This is not a position that we would like to be in. It is a very uncomfortable position. To oppose your government on something doesn't feel good. And to oppose it on something where we are advocating for civil liberties, which they are supposed to protect, it is incredibly ironic.
Now, in that clip, it was amazing to me what the FBI director has to say, saying it's not about a slippery slope, but about, 14 people that were killed and, preventing terrorist attacks. Again, this is sensationalist talk, right? the fact that you have to go about and say that it's about 14 people that are killed and preventing a terrorist attack. One, saying that the 40 people that are killed is an appeal to emotions, and then two, preventing terrorist attacks. The question is, whenever was it the American people's responsibility to prevent terrorist attacks, right? We're citizens, and yes, we play our part, but whenever was it that our responsibility? This is something that comes firsthand to, you know, to the agencies that be, and granted, in most cases, you need the help of citizens to solve certain things. But you see, this whole media depiction of the relationship that exists between us and ISIS now obviously makes it a little bit more pressuring on Apple to do this thing, because people are going to say like, hey, you know, like, Apple, are you helping ISIS out? Like, what's going on? You know, and this is just a way that the media likes to put pressure on people by sensationalizing away everything. Now let's just look at a couple more media responses. Let's look at this one. This is from the Daily Times. This is actually a web page in Pakistan, a website in Pakistan, and the question is asked, FBI directors ask, what if Apple engineers are kidnapped and forced to write code? Now all these hypothetical questions, right? Again, you know, what message are they trying to send to Apple, right? It's like, at the end of the day, like, what if you were put into that position? Like, would you write the code then? It's like, you know, come on. Like, you know, it's a life and death thing. Just write the passcode and just let it, you know, let it be, you know, and again, they're putting this pressure on him where he has, and you know, and that, as you saw in the interview, he said it's about principle. And how many people do we have that operate on principle anymore, right? People do anything nowadays for a very small price. It doesn't matter to them. Everything is about whatever I can do to benefit myself, to make it $1 or whatever, right? And let's just cut again out to this Fox News clip, and you can see, you know, how the media again is presenting the issue. Just look at this Fox News clip.
Siding with Apple.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think the economic viability of our tech sector, if you force them to degrade the quality of the technology that they make, that inherently puts most of our privacy and our personal data and our financial data at risk, I think that's bad for America.
Even though this is national security.
Yeah, I think national security is an issue for sure. It's an important issue. That's a point on a continuum. I think privacy and economic viability is a point on a continuum. You have to look at both of them.
Dagan, I know you're on the other side of this trade. Make the case.
I think that here's one of the issues, that telecom companies and traditional phone companies, they, under wiretapping laws, they have to make their data accessible to law enforcement agencies. They have to have equipment that's designed to comply with court orders. And Apple increasingly has equipment and phones that is designed so it never has to comply with a court order. Don't you think Tim Cook is asking Congress to step in and get in the middle of this? Don't they need to be afraid that Congress does something that maybe hurts their business and hurts their brand?
Well, at least at that point in time, the debate isn't a public scene with the congressional authorities. It's not played out through a judicial system like the way it is right now. So I think this is a debate that should be had. I think America and the rest of the world would like to see it. Unfortunately, I mean, the national security apparatus has a tremendous amount of authorities. Law enforcement has a tremendous amount of authorities and capabilities. It's unfortunate that the only way that they can deliver what they would define as success here is by creating a vulnerability in one of the most widespread technologies in the world. Yeah. So it's unfortunate that's the only avenue that is in front of us here. You'd hope there's other ways.
Jerry Baker from the Wall Street Journal is here today. Jerry, weigh in here.
I mean, but the point is, first of all, I don't believe that this will destroy, asking Apple to create this software that we're able to do this will destroy the U.S. tech sector. Everybody understands that there is a balance to be struck between privacy and national security, and it's up to, you know, it's up to the law court. Ultimately, it's up to the judges.
But isn't this a slippery slope, Jerry?
No, because the key thing here is that this is not, you know, what Tim Cook is saying is I understand again why he wants to protect privacy, and I think he's doing it for very good reasons. But what he's saying is not correct. This idea that if we do this, the government will just be able to open any phone that it wants at will. It can't do that. It has to get a judge's warrant. It has to get a warrant in order to do that. There's a very strong case here for them to open this case. Just as the technology exists for the government, if it wanted to bash down your door and walk in and take anything it wanted to, okay? It's called an axe and a hammer. It could just walk in and do that. But it can't do that legally because of the Constitution, because of the protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. The government cannot conduct unreasonable searches and seizures. It has to get a warrant. It has to make its case. It has to go through due process, and it has to demonstrate probable cause. So it will have to do all of those things. It's an incredibly high bar, and this idea that the government can just march in and take over everything in your house or on your phone is not correct.
What about that, John?
Yeah, I don't think the issue here is what the government can and can't do. I think the issue is what the threat actors around the world can do. If you create a vulnerability in a core technology product, other people will figure out a way to exploit that vulnerability.
Like China.
That's correct. Or other criminals around the world.
But they're exploiting the fact that they can hide within the phones. That's the concern on the other side, that criminals are cheering the fact that the FBI potentially and law enforcement will not be able to get into these phones ever based on what the design plans that Apple has.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of moving parts here. I mean, the clear ability to secure communications and all of the business capabilities that are enabled through a phone, there's real economic requirement to do that. By the flip side, it's not the only requirement. The notion of law enforcement being able to gain access legally to information is also viable. I think there's a balance here, but you don't. To me, it's really hard to swallow that the only mechanism that we'd have through our law enforcement intelligence community is to crack a phone.
It's true. It's actually extraordinary. You're right. I mean, it's unbelievable that Apple is the only one who can do this.
And Tim Cook calls that the software equivalent the government wants a cancer. I think that was a bridge too far. But again, is he going to win over more fanboys and fangirls with that interview he did?
Yeah.
Who knows?
John, thank you. Thanks so much for your insights. Appreciate it. We'll see you soon, sir.
You're welcome, Maria.
John Waters.
Now, at the start of that particular Fox News clip, I want you to notice that the question that the reporter asked him was, you're on Apple's side, right? The issue is not about sides, whose sides you're taking. The issue is about principle, right? And if people can begin to think on principle, then there can be more of an objective move to say, okay, this is the principle, this is what we're going to operate on, and go by that. It's not about, oh, I'm on Apple's side or on the FBI side. And, you know, one thing I've come to realize is that people really have not grown up, you know, as adults. There's always this thing of, whose side are you on? You know, this is something that we all dealt with in kindergarten. And as adults, it should not be brought up again. Here, CNBC also has their take on it. And, you know, just listen to this.
A U.S. magistrate judge has asked Apple to help the FBI access an iPhone belonging to one of the San Bernardino terrorists. And in response, Apple CEO Tim Cook has called the request chilling, saying that he opposes the court order on privacy grounds. So let's talk more about this. And with us today, Eric Schiffer, CEO of Patriarch Equity. So, Eric, let's talk about this. And Tim Cook himself has said that this unprecedented step threatens the security of our customers. Do you agree?
Look, I think Apple is ripping off the security of the American people. We are at war right now. And frankly, they are giving Apple a safe haven for ISIS to be able to communicate. And they're doing it, they're allowing it. They're doing it, frankly, for profits. I think it's frankly disgraceful. I think it's a disgrace what they're doing. And I think that ultimately Apple will have the blood of dead Americans on their hands for these kinds of decisions.
Well, I think in response, Eric, Tim Cook is saying that we simply don't have this software, and what you're asking us to do goes against the decades that Apple has spent trying to build security and really fortify security for their customers.
I don't buy it. I think it's not true. I don't buy it. I think it is another excuse for Apple to continue to rip off the security of the American public. And I don't think it's right. I think it's a disgrace.
Well, they're saying that this case has implications far beyond the legal case at hand. So what about this, I guess, the stand on encryption and privacy going forward?
Well, look, I think that encryption is a good thing to the extent that we don't let our enemies be able to continue to plan the next destructive event in the United States. And I think that's what's happening right now. And Apple's taking the position, look, if you were ISIS, you'd love Apple. In fact, you'd probably be praising Apple right now because they're giving them the ability to hide from federal authorities and be able to plan another destructive event. Apple, frankly, is wrong here. I think they continue to rip off the security of the American public, and something should be done. And I think ultimately it will be done. Ultimately, probably by the government in some fashion.
So you're thinking the government's going to force Apple's hand at some point?
I think absolutely. I think if you have a Donald Trump in office, or you have someone that even President Obama, at some point, if there's certainly another big terrorist event, this will change. And Apple, unfortunately, is making a bad choice, and they will have blood of dead Americans on their hands.
All right, Eric, thank you again for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for watching today. I'm Susan Lee. You have a great day.
And, you know, I want to be as nice as I can be to the guy in the CNBC clip, but I mean, to me, it's almost as though, you know, he's a tool, and he's constantly repeating things to bring it over to you. You know, he's saying how the blood of you know, people is going to be on Apple's hands, and how Apple's supporting terrorists. Again, sensationalism is what the media thrives on, and you know, to me, it was just a little bit disgusting to watch that interview. As you can see, that, well, you may not be able to see it, but that interview had very few likes. It was more dislikes than anything. You know, he was just somebody that just wanted to carry out the demands of whoever is over him. And now this is probably one of the biggest privacy or encryption issues within the past 10 or so years, and our US government has found a way to compound the problem, and they've decided to highlight two issues. One of them they probably did not intend to implicate, but that's the issue of privacy and preservation of the Fourth Amendment. All right. And the other obvious issue is that of national security. Now, Cook's unwillingness to comply with the FBI's order to build a type of software that will compromise the safety of their clients' phones and also its stability has put him in a class of individuals before him who have been listed as threats to national security, from Dr. Daniel Ellsberg, Julian Assange, Bradley Manning, Edward Snowden, and John Carrico, and many others. And, you know, as I'm looking at this case, you know, Tim Cook seems to be the strangest new addition, right? And his addition is strange to me because he attempts to preserve the rights of all Americans to privacy, right? The same privacy that our own government exercises over certain files that they have classified, and say that the American people are not able to handle what will be released. So the American government glorifies privacy, right, and classification because everything is classified with the American government. But then when it comes to now dealing with the privacy of Americans, it doesn't really matter as much, right? And you can delve into and look into their lives as much as you want. And so, you know, to me, Tim Cook's addition to this list is kind of interesting and troubling because it shows the direction that we're going, right? Where there's no longer any respect for the liberties that this country was founded upon. Now so, you know, this information that the government doesn't want to release is information that the American people should have released to them. They should have a right to know, because again, it's a government for the people and by the people, right? They have accused whistleblowers of being careless when it comes to America's safety by divulging its secrets, right? This is what the government says. The government wants its privacy when they want to cover something up, but the people want their Fourth Amendment right to be guaranteed. But in the name of national security, you and I are expected to simply give it all away, right? And this is how easily people give up their rights. You know, people become afraid of whatever the issue may be or whatever is going on, and you know, people simply just to protect themselves give everything away. You know, to me, it's the greatest irony and hypocrisy. What we call privacy, the government calls classified. And maybe and I don't want to be controversial, but maybe Tim Cook should say, hey, you know, what if you guys were to give up some of the privacy that you have over there, the FBI, and maybe I'll do what I'm doing at Apple. And obviously, as much as it would look as a fair exchange, you know, the FBI is not going to do that, all right? Now, the Fourth Amendment states that the right of the people to be secure in their the Fourth Amendment states, that it's the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things. And how well has that right been guaranteed by our government? Not very well at all, right? Edward Snowden's big reveal about the NSA listening to all of our phone calls, looking at all of our text messages, and even spying on foreign leaders simply expose how much they simply do not care about ensuring the rights of all Americans. The American people, based on the concept of a democracy, should be the bosses of those in the Senate and the House, and even in the White House. But that has not been the reality, because America has been taking orders from someone else, all right? America's ever-growing love affair with the papacy is evident, and it will not be too long before the papacy gets down on one knee and proposes to America, and she accepts. The world has gravitated to the social element of things, and we are social beings, and we like to share things, but we have shared too much. Social media has done on a bigger scale what the papacy has been aiming at for a long time. And, you know, the head of the Free Software Foundation, Richard Stallman, said that social networking sites are like a godsend to the government, right? We give away information, you know, stuff that we kept private, we give away freely, you know, nowadays. Social media has done, you know, as I said again, on a bigger scale, what the papacy has been aiming at for a long time. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all good, all media outlets which I use as well. You know, but all these other social network sites have been used to mobilize people into one. And this is the idea of the one world concept. Most people have not realized it because they have the benefit of linking up with a friend or, you know, old friend or family member through Facebook, through Twitter, you know, growing a relationship. So what can be bad about this? But it's actually bringing people into one, right? I mean, a couple of years ago, you saw how they were advertising Facebook as this entity that had reached almost 1 billion followers and no enemies, right? And there's a reason why the media had to highlight Facebook in that way, because it's bringing people into one. It's showing people the power of Facebook, because at the end of the day, it's bringing everybody into one. Everybody's connected, right? And this is why media outlets like this are instrumental to gravitate people's minds into one way of thinking. And realize, I think there was an article that came out recently that said that people go to Facebook and other media outlets for their news now, and you know, they don't go to mainstream media sources for their news. All right. But yes, the people's minds are just where the papacy wants them, because it is now very easy for them to complete their ecumenical aim. Revelation 17:13 tells us that the nations of the world have one mind, but they do with the mind they have, they give it, but what they do with the mind that they have, they give it to the beast. This is where issues like the Apple versus FBI mess is taking us, and we have to be very careful that our minds aren't yoked with these nations to violate the liberty that God has given to every man. Guys, let us put things in perspective and be a bit smarter and wiser about how we see the current issue. Again, I'm Stephen Leslie for Perspective Thinking, and thanks for watching.